I have a Rolex that my friend Lorenzo gave me, and I brought it to the watch store, and I said, this thing's always fast. I said, it's always like, after a couple months, it's like 5 minutes fast. And they go, yep. They go, yeah.
Really?
It's just what it does. Oh, so you're telling me that it just is always going to be fast? They's like, yeah. It's just like every few months you got to like reset it.
My sister reached out to me there asking about her watch. I had given her a watch over Christmas. Really nice, mechanical, automatic, and suited her great, and she loved it. But then I got a message from her last week saying it's going too fast. It's a couple of minutes ahead. And I thought at first, oh God, is there something wrong? Is it magnetized? Does it need some looking at? But then I stopped for a second and I thought, hold on a minute. It's been a couple of months since Christmas, and that's when I gave her the watch. Has she reset the watch at all? Does she not know that mechanical watches go a little fast or a little slow in most cases? And am I the crazy one for expecting her to know that? It kind of made me reflect about this whole watch thing. When you're gifting a watch to someone who's not into watches, perhaps giving quartz is the smarter idea. I found myself explaining to my sister that mechanical watches don't really hold very good time. And it's one of the contradictions of our hobby that's very difficult to explain to most. The truth is that cheap watches, quartz watches, and digital watches are the ones that keep accurate time. Mechanical watches simply don't. Now, obviously, when you get to the high level of things, the Rolex and the Pateks and so on, then they get closer and closer to holding perfect time. We all know that. But even then, it's still plus or minus 2 seconds. And in the digital world, compared to an atomic clock or to a quartz clock, that's awful. You know, a quartz watch is going to fall out by 2 seconds every year, not every day. And an atomic clock is never going to fall out of time. And that's what all our phones and our Apple Watches and so on are synced to. So it's a strange contradiction in mechanical watches that we're all just kind of used to, but we don't talk about. The fact that our watches are very expensive, but kind of awful timekeepers. My sister's watch has nothing wrong with it at all. It's a perfectly good watch. But the movement in there has a plus 15 seconds or 18 seconds, minus 15 seconds per day. You never know where it's going to come in. It might come in right on zero. It could come in plus 6, 7, 8 seconds, minus 3 or 4. You don't know. It depends. Each movement is slightly different. It's just been a couple of months. And of course, gaining 10, 15 seconds a day, whatever it's doing, adds up. I remember seeing a Joe Rogan episode where he was on with Elon and he was talking about his Rolex gaining time, and he brought it to the authorized dealer and they basically just said, yeah, this is what these watches do. Now, Elon didn't give him the correct answer either. You think that guy would know what he was talking about. Actually, he wouldn't. But anyway, the truth is, even a Rolex, if you don't reset the time 6 months later on a plus or minus 2 seconds accuracy, it's definitely gonna have either lost a minute or gained a minute or two. The watch right behind me, right there, is my Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Chrono. I haven't even tested the accuracy of it. From what I hear, AP watches aren't even that accurate as it goes. I don't know if that's gotten any better. I don't know if it changes from watch to watch. But truthfully, it's not really about holding perfect time. And this is where it gets really interesting. How do you explain to a non-watch person why you would want to spend 10,000, 20, 50,000, whatever, on a watch that doesn't hold perfect time as well as your iPhone does, or even as well as the quartz clock on the office wall? It comes down to a few different factors, and all I can use are analogies and metaphors as usual. That's pretty much how I speak. So here's a good one. For hundreds of years, painters tried to recreate life, still life painting is a whole side of fine art. And though sometimes the realism was extraordinary, along came the photograph. And the photograph kind of blew it out of the water in terms of realism, because a photograph is exactly the image. If you take a photograph of the same thing you painted, there is no doubt that the photograph has higher accuracy and the perfect proportions for everything, because it's a photograph of the thing. There was no paintbrush used. But that doesn't stop us from marveling at the painting. A very expensive sought-after photograph can maybe cost you a couple of $1,000. But a fine art painting is a totally different thing. And its accuracy is not really what we're judging it on. In fact, some paintings are really abstract and are not accurate, and their proportions are all over the bloody place. But we don't care, because the painting is about something else. And some paintings can go for millions of dollars. That's a pretty good analogy for what's happening with beautiful mechanical watches versus quartz and digital watches. They don't have any soul. The next thing to note about it is the miracle of isochronism. That's how a mechanical watch works. It has a little balance going back and forth. It's doing a little dance in a rhythm, and it's all tuned up beautifully. It was discovered hundreds of years ago, and it's a thing of beauty. It also means that the watch can never die. With a quartz watch, of course, once the battery dies, the watch is completely dead. You have to replace the battery. And of course, with an Apple Watch or anything digital like that, it relies on all those servers out there and the software it's speaking through. The moment that those stop, it stops. Or the moment that it becomes obsolete technology, there's nothing that can be done. Whereas a mechanical watch can be found in 10,000 years by alien explorers and then wound, and it will start ticking again. It's literally something that will last forever, because the laws of isochronism and geometry existed long before we were here and will exist for as long as the universe exists. So there's that connection to the infinite. Your mechanical watch, as long as you're moving it or you wind it or both, will always keep ticking. And there is a third thing that needs to be outlined here. Timekeeping is an odd thing, because yes, we have very accurate clocks in our iPhones and so on. They're all, of course, synchronized with atomic clocks on remote servers. When you think about this Rolex, for example, this is running at 4 hertz on the inside of the movement, which means every second it's ticking 8 times. It's 1 hertz is all the way from A to B and back to A again in the oscillation. When it comes to a quartz watch, for example, this funny little thing, the quartz is actually oscillating at 32,000 times per second. So it's infinitely more accurate than 4 times per second versus 32,000. There are a lot more fine slices of the seconds. When you're talking about an atomic clock, however, the atom in cesium-133, which is the isotope they use, oscillates at around 9 billion hertz. So that even makes the quartz look inaccurate. But who needs that? If you're calibrating instruments or you need some sort of synchronization between satellites and servers on the ground or something, then sure, an atomic clock and its incredible accuracy is definitely advantageous. But for the rest of us in normal life, how accurate do we need time to be measured? Let's say you call your friends and arrange to meet at 8 p.m. for dinner, for example. Well, you might arrive at 8 p.m. on the dot, but your friend might arrive a minute or two ahead of you. Another friend might arrive 2 or 3 minutes after that. But even if everyone was right on time, no one would arrive at exactly 8 p.m., would they? You would all arrive within a minute or two. According to an atomic clock, that's way off time. That's miles late or miles early. But you don't really notice it. For you and your friends, you all pretty much arrived at 8 p.m. roughly. So there's a certain cutoff point where timekeeping doesn't need to be that accurate, unless you're really timing something to a split second. Timekeeping is fine if it's approximate in our life. If you're running for the train or running for the bus, and let's say that bus leaves at, 9:05, it's never leaving at exactly the same time every single day, not according to an atomic clock. For the driver on his watch, it says 9:05, and he fires up the engine and off he goes. But that's way out of sync with probably what an atomic clock is telling you. It's probably 9:05 and 30 milliseconds or something, which to an atomic clock is an eternity of difference. But to us, it ain't. We don't care. And truthfully, for humans in their everyday life, approximate timekeeping is more than enough for us to use. We don't even require the sort of timekeeping that a quartz clock has, and certainly not what an atomic clock has that this thing is talking to. I'll remind you, this does not have an atomic clock inside. It's simply speaking to a server that has one. Those things are like big contraptions. There is something to be said for giving someone a quartz watch. Now, you can spend a lot of money on a quartz. You can get a Cartier, as I said, like my daughter's watch is worth $3,500. It's not a cheap watch, but it is quartz, and she doesn't have to worry about setting it or winding it, or if she puts it down on her nightstand and leaves it there over the weekend, is it going to be stopped when she comes back to it, or anything like that. It's just an extra thing that adds to her day. She doesn't want to think about that. She wants to set it and forget it. You guys are not like that. Neither am I. We're kind of mechanically minded people. We like to wind our watch and set it and check it all the time and look at the back at the movements and stuff. We're nerds. We're geeks when it comes to this stuff. But the truth is, most people out there don't want to interact, and they might even think that the watch is cheap and nasty because they have to keep resetting it. You might actually be doing them a favor by just giving them a quartz watch so they don't have to worry. If it looks pretty and it wears well on the person, that's kind of all they want, and they don't want to have to think about the mechanics. They don't want to have to get in and start fiddling with the crown. This is all stuff that we know because we're watch fanatics, but we shouldn't expect the general public to have any idea about this stuff. In fact, don't be surprised if they think our watches are crap because they gain or lose a couple of seconds every day. Anyway, after saying all that, I'm going to take off this little homage thing and put back on what we call a real watch, right, fellas? Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching the channel. New videos coming up soon. Peace, love, and gorgeous mechanical wristwatches, hopefully. Take it easy. See you in the next one.